Welcome to the Mixed Reviews. I'm Gavin.
Hi everyone, I'm Louie.
And this is a film podcast in which we give ourselves 2 weeks to watch as many movies on a subject as we possibly can, and then we talk to you about it.
Yeah, and we had a really good time, I think, last week.
We did.
And
our last episode.
Not last week. Yeah, it's been years.
It's been years.
Our last episode, we talked about Gina Davis.
Yes. So we have some old business to get out of the way before we move into our next subject.
Right. And we asked you guys on Twitter to vote for what you thought was or what your favorite Gina Davis movie is. And I guess technically the poll still has 2 days and 20 hours left, but...
Were you drunk?
I was wasted when I put that up. But the results so far, The Fly came in at 13%, Thelma and Louise at 17%, Beetlejuice also got 17%, and A League of Their Own, which was our pick, came in at top at 53%.
I just want you all to know you have excellent taste.
Yes, absolutely.
Though I will admit, looking at the poll, and I believe you even put that up, like, that's a toughie.
Yeah. My good friend, she was like, I don't even know what to say.
I can't begrudge anybody to, like, you know...
It honestly just speaks to, like, how iconic she is.
Yeah.
Like, she was in so many amazing, like, legendary roles, legendary movies, and they're so different. Like, looking at Beetlejuice and A League of Their Own.
I still feel like, and we don't need to talk about it now because we gave her a full episode, but, like, the fact that Earth Girls Are Easy is so late in her career...
like, I mean, and she looks good.
She looks so good.
But anyway, are we done?
We're done with Gina. We're putting Gina to bed. Thank you so much, Gina.
Thank you, Gina. Oh, that's
sachet away.
Right. Gina Bonita Brown.
Yes.
Davis.
Davis.
I just wanted to say that again. But this week we're talking about Mr. Tucci Gang himself.
Yes.
Stanley Tucci.
The Tooch.
Are you going to play some Tucci Gang?
Oh, of course I am.
Okay, good.
How could I not?
I was just like wondering if it was going to be here. Stanley Tucci good old Stanley reminds me a lot. He's like in the same camp.
Of an older boyfriend you once had?
That I wish I once had.
Daddy Tucci.
Daddy Tucci. That's all I want, all I need. He like reminds me a lot of Sam Rockwell. He lives in the same camp as Sam.
Well, he came up during that period, and I'm sure we'll get to that when we get to the rewind. In fact, why don't we enter the rewind now, just so we can start talking about it.
Get in it.
He comes from that same era of, like, that indie film rising. You know, he did a lot of I mentioned during the Sam Rockwell episode the movie In the Soup, in which Sam Rockwell plays a very minor role. Stanley Tucci also has a minor role in that movie. It's a Steve Buscemi film. And he's from that era. There's a lot of Steve Buscemi circling his orbit. There's a lot of other actors. I'm trying to think that, like, kind of fit in. Susan Sarandon pops up a lot in his films. And
Patricia
Clarkson. Yes. Yeah. I tried to find, there used to be this wonderful feature on IMDb where you could determine how many movies people were in together, and it doesn't exist anymore.
Womp womp.
Because they've been in something like 11 movies together.
That's wild.
Yeah, they're really good friends.
But yeah, he feels a lot like a 90s, like, of the stage New York guy. And, so, and also just, reminds me a lot of Sam Rockwell in the way that, like, he's so charming and everyone loves him, loves working with him. He's just like, anytime you see him on the screen and he's in a million things, it's just like, I love him. I love him.
But that's also my complaint, is that he's been in a million things for 5 seconds.
Right. Let me give you a little bit of history of Mr. Tucci. He was born on November 11th, 1960. That makes him 57 years old. Just like, chef's kiss.
I was going to say, like, fine wine, and this man has aged. Like, looked good young, looked good old, even in that weird stage where he wasn't acknowledging the fact that he was balding. It's fine.
Right.
He, like, pulls it all off.
He pulls it all off. And I want him to pull it all off. He was born in Peekskill, New York, and grew up in nearby Katona. His mom was a secretary, Joan, and his dad, Stanley Tucci Sr., he was an art teacher at a high school. They are of Italian descent, and they have roots in Calabria. That's how they say it there. He's the oldest of 3 children, and he has a sister, Christine Tucci, who's also an actress. Do you know of her from anywhere? I tried to look up.
She is I believe she's in Big Night with him.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But I think that might be the only place that I've really seen her.
He also, his cousin, Joseph Tropiano, is a screenwriter who he wrote Big Night with. he also, when he was a child in the 70s, he says he spent a lot of time in Italy, with his parents. They lived there for a while. They would like travel and visit. So he really...
Yeah, it's a tough life.
I know.
Being of the Tucci lineage.
It's like an artist father going to Italy all the time.
I wish you would support my lifestyle less.
I know.
Parents.
Also,
punish me once, every now and then.
I'm feeling like I would not be surprised for 1 second if Stanley Tucci had a Call Me By Your Name situation in Italy. Oof, I can dream. I can dream. He went to John Jay High School where he played on the soccer team and the baseball team. Love that. But his main interest was in drama club, so he's been an actor for like ever.
Yeah.
A fellow actor in high school, Buddy Campbell Scott, who's a son of actor George C. Scott.
Which literally, until we started researching this, I had no idea. I've met Campbell Scott. He's incredibly nice.
Casual.
He's like big in the like 90s independent scene. Cause I saw his movie, I suddenly can't think of the name of it anymore, but there was a movie he made in the 90s about him and a kid. And yeah, I saw that at like a film festival, and he was super cool, super nice. No idea he is any relation to George C. Scott, let alone his son.
Right. And they gave lots of well-received performances at their high school drama club productions. He went to SUNY Purchase, which is really cool, and which was really famous for a lot of kind of New York actors that go there to major in acting. He graduated in 1982. Ving Rhames was one of his classmates.
Yeah, he gave him the nickname Ving, which we all know him by.
Right. I don't even know what Ving Rhames' real name is.
Yeah, no idea. Kevin? Is it
It's probably
Stanley?
Kevin. Yeah. There's Stanley Tucci was like, there's only one Stanley here.
Exactly.
And it's me. He got his equity card when Colleen Dewhurst, which was the mother of Campbell Scott, arranged for both of them to have parts in a Broadway play, The Queen and the Rebels. That was in 1982. So nothing
Stanley
like
played the Queen.
Stanley was the Queen. Nothing like a little nepotism to get your start in the biz.
Before going on stage, I always did the vocal warm-ups that I was taught, which was the Linklater method of voice and, sort of releasing the voice that we studied for too many years in university. And relaxation exercise is always that. And I think your play opens tonight. It'll be a great show. Tomorrow night is the night you have to worry about. Because you'll have a great show tonight, and then tomorrow night, you'll anticipate that it will be exactly the same as it was the night before, and it won't be. So tomorrow night is what you need to worry about.
His film debut was in Prizzi's Honor in 1985. Gavin,
I do not like that movie, but I know that movie has a following. I don't know why.
Gavin just was waiting to exhale just then. Mm-hmm. He performed in the Yale Repertory Theater in 1991. And literally it was like bang, a gun went off, and he was working all through the 90s. Like we mentioned, he's been in 150 movies.
Something like that. I think it's 123 altogether.
Which is wild. The biggest break for him though was, in Big Night in 1996, which he starred in, co-wrote.
And co-directed with Campbell Scott.
Yeah. And that premiered at Sundance, and that's kind of what kicked off his career. He was in high demand. And was able to kind of vacillate between TV, movies, big blockbuster things, small things. He was, I read that he was kind of typecast a lot for being a villain early in his career.
Which is so funny, because that is not how we know Stanley Tucci nowadays.
Now, when I fucking watched, the Lovely Bones, I was like, I was like, this is not the Stanley Tucci I know and love. I don't know if many people would think of him as a villainy type character, but he was a villain in The Pelican Brief.
Yeah.
He was playing maybe not a villain, but a very aggressive, angry man in, is it Mornings with Velvet?
Some Velvet Morning.
Yeah, right. I was like, why is he so angry? I don't like my tooth. This is not the way I like my tooth.
It is interesting to watch him get angry on film, because there's something interesting about, he's not I don't feel like he's an imposing figure. He's a smaller sort of man. He's a smaller man, but there is something intimidating about him.
Oh yeah.
And when he flips that switch, it's there.
It's unnerving.
Yeah, exactly.
He has that thing where he looks so welcoming and genuine, and
you want to kiss both cheeks.
Right. And that's what's scary. He's able to you would never have seen it coming. And so when he does turn on you, it's like, oh shit, like, what must it take for a man who is so kind and welcoming and loving to go to these crazy places?
Doing something like The Lovely Bones was satisfying because I felt I pulled off something that was a very difficult thing to pull off. And it was a very painful process to do that film, to play that role. Because you're dealing with a character where I played, if you haven't seen the film, a child molesting serial killer. Playing this character was incredibly daunting. Because the thing is, you can't just make him sort of evil and some sort of monster. He's a human being. And the more human you make him, the more terrifying he is. And the more believable he is. So that's really the goal. And that's hard. It's hard. Yeah. It's hard. It's sort of unnerving.
He has been nominated for 3 Golden Globes. He's won twice. He won one for Winchell, which was a 1998 HBO movie. And then he also won one for being on Monk. Right.
Yeah. He guest starred on Monk.
Which
was he also nominated for Conspiracy?
He was nominated, but it did not win.
Oh, okay.
And Conspiracy is a 2001 HBO film. And he was also nominated for a Tony Award for Best Actor in a Play in his role in Terrence McNally's Frankie and Johnny and the Claire de Lune. Also some hot goss. I didn't know this. He had an affair with
I don't know this.
Edie Falco, who was also starring in and I read this. I don't have the receipts in front of me, but I did read this in the research. Yeah, he apparently left his wife Kate to be with his star, his co-star in this play. The relationship did not last, and he went back to Kate. Kind of a downer, I guess. His wife Kate did pass away from breast cancer.
Yeah,
in
super sad.
In 2009, I believe.
Yeah, not a crazy long time ago.
No.
And he had 2. How many kids did he have?
I want to say he had 3.
3, and then there's also he was helping raise her kids from a previous marriage. I believe that's 2.
Right, and then
my math is not good, guys.
Right. I mean, I should fact check that, but I don't. He has there are many little Tucci's. Gucci. I don't know why I said that. He got remarried to Emily Blunt's older sister in 2011 or 12. And yeah, he met her through Emily because they worked together on The Devil Wears Prada.
Well, I met her at her sister's wedding. Mm-hmm. She's Emily Blunt is her sister. Emily's
Emily
great.
Blunt, the actress.
So we met at Em's wedding, and then we both realized that we had this love of food, and we started eating out together a lot. And then she came and stayed with me in America, and we started cooking together, and it was great.
What kind of stuff did you cook?
Well, one of the first things that we cooked together, there were pheasants that we cooked together that we were given by the restaurant below her apartment, and he told us how to pluck them, so we were plucking them on a Saturday morning.
You got a pheasant with the feathers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's a heck of a pick. Like, baby, let's go pluck some pheasant together.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, lots of plucking going on, so that was nice.
Wow.
Yeah.
Like I mentioned, in 2006, that's when he was on Monk, and he got an Emmy for Outstanding Guest Actor. Him and Tony Shalhoub are like best friends. They were together in at least 2 movies. They're in Big Night together. They're in The Imposters together.
They're in a bunch of movies together. It's not just that. And they were also going to do... He directed this movie called Blind Date, which they had rehearsed for 5 weeks with Tony Shalhoub, and then he had to drop out because the funding fell and the schedule changed and he had to go shoot more Monk. And he stepped in. He stepped in and took over the role. And it's funny because I read an interview with Patricia Clarkson and Stanley Tucci because she's the female lead in it because it's mostly just them. And the very first thing that when it was brought up, she was like, "Oh, Anthony's the better kisser." She's like, "Absolutely." And she's like, "He is a much better kisser than Stanley Tucci." I like that she calls
Tony Anthony.
Anthony.
Oh, Anthony. Also, were they not so? Tony Shalhoub is also in Quick Change, right?
Yes.
And we were talking about this earlier.
He's a cab driver, yeah.
Yeah, he's the cab driver.
Which he then played for the next, 10 years of his career.
Right. Tony Shalhoub, who's playing, every,
vaguely
ethnic person.
Yeah.
He's, aggressively, Italian in Big Night, aggressively, now Jewish in, The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel.
Yeah.
Which is amazing. sorry, we got sidetracked on Tony Shalhoub, but only to say that he's best friends with Stanley Tucci, which I live, laugh, love. Like I said, he's been on a lot of TV. Also, he had a medical drama on CBS called 3 Pounds. It was canceled pretty quickly.
He was also on the first season of Murder One. Murder One was a really excellent TV show that I liked. Each season was going to focus on a different murder, and he was like the creepy bad guy on the first season.
Right.
Yeah.
He was also on a British show called Fortitude. Yeah, I mean, he's been in so much stuff. It's kind of ridiculous. In 2009, when he played, was when he did Lovely Bones, in which he got a Oscar nomination for. His only Oscar nomination. That movie's crazy. And it was not what I thought it was going to be. I mean, he's been like, and he has all these bit parts in so many things. He is the doctor that gives Captain America his Captain America-ness.
Dr. Erskine.
Right.
Yeah.
He's in Devil Wears Prada. He plays, Julia Child's, husband. Is it Paul Child?
Yes, I think so. That sounds right. Here, let me look that up.
Julia and Julia. Both with Meryl Streep. He played, maybe his most well-known, like, around the world is his role, in the Hunger Games series.
Yes. As Caesar Flickman. Yes, Paul Child. Yeah.
Paul Child, yeah. Caesar Flickman, yeah. During the campiest camp that ever camped.
Yes. He was kind of perfect casting for that because, I mean, I'll be honest, when I first heard he was playing that role, and I have a feeling this is not going to be one of our picks, so I'm fine with talking about the Hunger Games right now. When he was first cast, I had read the books because I knew the movies were coming out, and I was like, meh, whatever. I was like, ugh, Stanley Tucci, like, that's never gonna work. Like, I want, like flamboyant and, like crazy and...
Little did you know.
Yeah, no, in a pinch, just, like, beautiful.
So, Pete, tell me, is there a special girl back home?
No, not really.
No. I don't believe it for a second. Look at that face. Handsome man like you. Peter, tell me.
Well, there's this one girl that I've had a crush on forever. But I don't think she actually recognized me until the reaping.
Well, I'll tell you what, Peter. You go out there and you win this thing. And when you get home, she'll have to go out with you. Right, folks?
I mean, like, in Easy A, he says he was gay once. We've all been there.
We all do it.
Right.
Is everything all right? Sounds like you're having sex in here, which I know can't be true due to the fact that you have a homosexual boyfriend.
He's not my boyfriend.
Hey, no judgment. All God's children. It's fine. I was gay once, for a while. No big deal. We all do it. It's okay.
Dad, can you shut the door, please?
For Stanley Tucci, it was Hunger Games.
Yes.
Caesar Flickman.
Not any of the movies where he plays an actual gay man, like Burlesque and Devil Wears Prada.
True. So Stanley Tucci's been gay multiple times.
Yeah.
In my dreams. Also, I wanted to confirm right now that I watched half of Burlesque and was like, I'm done with Christina Aguilera trying to act. Goodbye.
I saw it in a dinner in a movie theater with my mom.
Wow.
And my then 14-year-old niece.
Wow.
So I just want you to know, I've taken one for the team, folks.
Right.
My mom loves Cher. So
I will say, I mean, and this is kind of also maybe something we can talk about. He just is able, we talked last episode about men not being able to rise to Gina Davis's level.
Yeah.
Stanley Tucci rises to the occasion with all these great female actresses. Like,
yes.
I'm just like, with Cher. I mean, the best parts of Burlesque, of what I saw, was Stanley Tucci just riffing with Cher, having so much fun.
Yeah.
He's just there. He's like, listen, I know I'm not doing like anything crazy here. I'm just like being funny and silly with Cher. Him with Meryl Streep. In both those movies, a delight.
Yeah.
Just completely.
He's good at sort of, he has this way of, and I noticed this in a bunch of his different films of making certain things almost sound like improv, and I don't mean that in like an insulting way, because they're always in tune with the scene, in tune with the character work he's clearly done beforehand, and they never feel out of place. But there's always something like a very sly silliness, even sometimes when he's playing villains, that he's able to like slip in, and it's almost like. It's like finding a hidden signature in a picture or something.
I think the clearest depiction of that is in Easy A.
Yeah.
Where and I think he has mentioned in interviews that he did improvise some lines.
Patricia Clarkson said the same thing, that they were very respectful to the script of Easy A, but they had, at that point, I think she said they had played a couple at least 5 times or 6 times on camera before, and so they felt so at ease with each other that they decided to just play as much off each other as they could. But once again, very respectful to the script. But
it's just like a delight to see.
Yeah.
You guys know that I was here all weekend, right?
Yeah.
Yes, you were upstairs.
Yeah.
You would testify to that?
Yeah.
I would take a bullet for you. You know that.
That is comforting.
That's how I am. That's how I roll. That's how I do, as they say.
I like the pants.
Thank you. They're Costco. You can have them when you get a little taller if you want.
I'm never going to go through puberty.
Of course you will, baby. But we're a family of late bloomers. I didn't until I was 14, nor did Olive.
Why does that matter? I'm adopted.
What? Oh my God! Who told you?
Guys, we were gonna do this at the right time.
Listen to me. Sometimes, even when a man and a woman love each other very much, like your mother and I used to, their insides just don't cooperate with each other.
And I think he also just gives room to these brilliant actresses to he knows that he's playing and I think I also read an interview, he's like, listen, I do all these movies, I go to set for 3 days.
Yeah.
I have a blast, and then I go home. And I can just chill. And he kind of recognizes that he is not being cast as leads, but also I didn't know that he was kind of such a crazy director, producer, writer character also.
Yeah,
and so
and I think that's part of his career that not enough people talk about.
Yeah.
Is the fact that he creates a lot of work for himself as well too.
Right. He's directed at least 4 movies.
Yes.
Which is Big Night, The Imposters.
There's the one I always forget.
Blind Date.
Blind Date, and then that's the burial of.
Hold
on 1 second.
Is it the Joe Gould one?
Yeah.
The Secret of Joe Gould?
Yes, that sounds right.
He also is really huge in the food world.
Yes.
He's a great cook, and he's talked a lot about this, how he thinks dinner with the family is so important, and cooking with your spouse and your kids is really great. He, so Wikipedia says was co-owner of the Finch Tavern in Croton Falls, New York. I don't know if that means that it has closed down.
Yeah.
I don't know if that means it has closed down or not, but I would love to take a little trip to Finch Tavern and see if I can find the Tucci there. And he also has, he released a cookbook in 2012 called the Tucci Cookbook. So yeah.
That isn't his only cookbook, by the way.
Okay, what's his other cookbook?
Also has the Tucci Table with Felicity Blunt.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Stanley Tucci and Felicity Blunt.
Love that.
Yeah.
There's a casual husband and wife cookbook.
Just making cookbooks.
Yeah.
Acting, doing literary agency stuff on the side.
I love that. He's also done a lot
of dream.
He also has done a lot of voice work. Did you, by chance, get to watch Space Chimps?
I didn't. I noticed, I think he's also in the sequel.
He is in Space Chimps, too.
Yes.
Correct.
I'm sorry. I'm not made of time.
Right. Well, surprise, that's my pick. No, I'm kidding.
5-star review.
Right. No, I mean, I didn't watch those either, but I just think it's really funny that he was a voice in Robots and also gave his voice for Robots, the video game.
Yes, and he was also a voice in Despero, about the little knight who's a mouse.
Yes.
The little mouse who's a knight. I mean, I have a niece who's now 19, but at the time, that's when Robots and that movie came out, and I've seen those movies many, many times, and
on purpose by myself.
Yeah.
He was also in Beauty and the Beast, the live action remake, as Maestro Cadenza. So yeah, I don't know how much more else we want to go into the rewind of him. He's got a million kids with his deceased wife. Is that a polite way to say that?
His wife who has passed.
His wife who's passed.
Yeah.
And he does have
deceased wife.
He does have a child with Felicity Blunt as well.
Yes.
And
there is just a ton of little Tucci's about.
And then just to maybe touch a little bit on his humanitarian work, he has worked with the United Nations Refugee Agency, UNHCR, to help raise awareness for the global refugee crisis. And yeah, I mean, between that and making a million movies a year, that kind of.
Yeah, the man's not hurting for work. I
mean,
if we were to name all the films that he did within the last 3 years, we wouldn't even have enough time to.
Yeah, I mean, like, and it's wild because it's very. I mean, maybe this is like a very good template for like he makes his Transformers 6 and 7 or whatever, and then he goes and makes like Margin Call,
right?
And so he definitely.
Well, that's the thing. He's found his like niche in blockbusters because he's. Not only did he do that, he did that horrible Jack the Giant Slayer movie by that child molester. I mean,
yes, correct.
No, that was right. Yeah,
that was correct.
And he does the Hunger Games, and but like in between those things, he does. Right. Or like he goes off and he actually has another film coming out this year, I believe, or just came out last year with Armie Hammer that he directed.
That's fun. So, is it Final Portrait?
Yes.
I have not seen it. It says it has come out, but...
Yeah, I couldn't find it, I'll be honest.
Maybe it hasn't come out, like... Yeah, really, really.
The most you can do, and it's easier as you get older, you can sort of make suggestions and work with the director or the writer, usually the director, on how to make it better. Or you make the decision just not to take the role and starve. You have to also look at the players involved and if you feel that these people are going to be collaborative. And if they're collaborative, then you can get to some place that isn't that terrible script that you've read. Do you know what I mean? But a lot of times, those experiences can be really, really useful. Having to figure out ways to say bad dialogue can teach you a great deal. And then maybe you walk away with a little money. And then that little bit of money in the bank will allow you to then go and do the thing that you really want to do. Whether it is creating your own thing or finding something that somebody else has done that's small and well written. It's always a balancing act. It always is.
There's so much to go through, but I saw Shall We Dance? He's in The Terminal.
I wasn't about to rewatch that.
No, I was like, we watched that for Diego Luna.
Yeah.
So this was a very hard one because he's in so many things.
He's in so many things, and he's in so many things for so little.
Right.
But I'm very curious to find out. We might as well rip the Band-Aid off. Let's deprecate before we celebrate.
I love that.
Let's go into our 1-star reviews.
Okay. I feel bad. I'm picking a movie that is very much a movie about him, for him. He is not just like a side character. Because if I wanted to, I could pick, In Too Deep or, any other garbage movie that he was in for like 5 seconds. But instead, I'm going to pick Joe Gould's Secret.
Oh, really? One that he directed, too.
I know. And I feel bad because I know this was probably a movie that, like, he loved making and, it's like an indie film and that he poured a lot of his heart into. I just did not connect at all to the story. And I know this is like based on a true story. And I'm going to be awful in describing the story, but essentially Joe Gould's Secret is about, Joe Gould, who is this New York character. He was this New York character, an eccentric, if you will, who claimed to have, written a history of everything. Is that what it's called? The history of everything? The history of something? It's like...
I unfortunately didn't see it. I'll be honest.
It's like, it's either like the history of everything or like an oral history or whatever. He had allegedly written down everything. He was, he's kind of like this homeless character who would just come in and out of places. And, Stanley Tucci plays a journalist who works for the New Yorker. New York Magazine, one of those two. And he plays, has a southern accent and, he's like, charming enough, but he's like looking for the hot next story to get.
Let me ask you a question.
Mm-hmm.
You know that fella who was in here the other day?
Who?
The small, disheveled looking.
That was you, Joe.
Oh, hush. No, you know who I'm talking
Gould,
about.
I know who you mean. Joe Gould, the writer.
Writer?
Yep, writing the history of the world. Well, don't say I never gave you anything.
What do you mean, the history of the world?
The history of the world? I'm telling you, not like a history book, like history, but more what people say to each other on the street, wherever, every day in their lives, you know? And an oral history, he says he calls it.
And he just runs into Joe Gould, and he wants to, like, he essentially writes this, like, very eccentric New Yorkie puff piece on him, and all of a sudden Joe Gould is, you know, getting sponsored by people to keep living because he's so eccentric and cool and quirky and crazy, and Susan Sarandon's there, and
yeah, that sounds right.
And I just was like, I hate Joe Gould so much. He's not, and I like I don't usually read reviews about movies before, like, to, like, but I read, and they were like, a critical darling. That was, you know, the little scene, and I was like, no. And apparently at the end of this movie, like, the history doesn't exist. In the end, he turns out to be he has some sort of, like, mental, psychological disorder that makes him, you know, write things over and over again. And I just didn't know what I was supposed to feel about at the end of this movie. And Stanley Tucci, I feel like in this movie, it's just not served to him. He was very, I don't know, I feel bad. I feel bad because I'm sure, like, this was like, oh, you know, I gotta get the story out. And in the real life story, this guy, he only reveals that Joe Gould's secret, that he had faked everything, after Joe Gould had died, and wrote this book revealing all of it, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, if you're looking for, like, some, like, I was really searching for, you know, movies where Stanley is front and center and gets a shine, and this movie is one of them. Unfortunately, the movie is just not great.
Yeah.
I was like, it very much felt like indie, like, just snooty, whatever, and I was like, why do I care? What am I learning? What am I, so yeah, Joe Gould's Secret, I don't recommend, I'm sorry.
So I have a pick along a similar vein. It's not a film he directed, but I also do want to get it out of the way. I do think it'd be a disservice to pick a film in which he appeared only in 5 minutes in, and I did watch some bad movies that he's only in a couple seconds of. But, you know, we're here to sort of judge him on a whole. So actually, I kind of really commend you, and I know, like, I don't want to upset anybody. This was a listener pick, by the way. We should have mentioned that up front. Our listener Melissa wanted us to do Stanley Tucci, so
and, like, a lot of people were excited.
Yeah, a lot of people were really excited. But I commend you for picking something that he was so involved in, because I think that's really what we're here to do. In my opinion. That being said, my
Burlesque.
My pick is Burlesque. My pick is 2013 Some Velvet Morning, which you mentioned briefly earlier.
Yeah.
I saw this film at the Tribeca Film Festival. The very first year I went for one of my former podcasts, and I was horrified that it was a movie. Like, I was so angry and upset, and I want to talk about the movie first to get it out of the way, and then I'll talk about Stanley Tucci. It's written by everyone's favorite misogynist, Neil LaBute. And Neil LaBute is a very talented playwright, and he just clearly hates women. And
don't we all?
Yeah. And then, yes. Anyways, and it's just Stanley Tucci and Alice Eve, and it takes place in a row house in Brooklyn. Stanley Tucci plays this man who's meeting his young lover. Through the course of it, it's all shot. It's very stagey and not in a good way. Which is funny because I've seen Neil LaBute shoot his own plays before, but it works for that, and it's very specific. And interesting. Here, it is not interesting at all. I didn't think. Like, it was way too stagey, but this man meeting his mistress, you come to find out that he claims he's left his wife, and you come to find out that she's a high-priced sex worker that he used to hook up with on business trips, and she's waiting for her next appointment, which is his son. And so it's like the slowly getting angry and angrier and more heated and more slightly violent, and finally, I will, if you do not want this film spoiled for you, you should fast forward for about 5 minutes.
It's a big spoiler.
But I'm gonna spoil it flat out. He rapes her, and then you find out that the whole thing is just a setup. It's a game that he is paid for. She is actually a sex worker, and it's a rape fantasy.
And it's essentially like the hour and a half or whatever we just saw.
It's only 80 minutes. It's not even an hour and a half.
Like, all that we just saw was like a setup, and he did not leave his wife. And,
Right.
and it's, the movie freaked me out a lot.
Yeah.
Until that very end, so like, it's like violent, and he's like, what would you do if I wouldn't let you out? And oh, like, you're fucking my son, and blah, 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 and is his dick big? Like, it's very, like, bizarre and angry.
I'm not mad. I'm just very, very disappointed.
I understand.
No, you don't. Because if you did, you would crawl over here and blow me. Just out of sympathy.
Is that what you think?
I wouldn't hate it.
Is that what you think? Hmm? That make you happy?
No, don't.
Don't do that. See, don't do that. Don't play those games. Why do you play those games? Why? I hate games.
I don't know what you mean.
Is that what you do with Chris? You play those little games with him? Is that what you do? That little, like, kissy, lovey games with him? Is that what you do?
Chris doesn't make me suck his cock. He doesn't make me do anything.
Well, isn't he a fucking pussy?
And then at the last minute, it's like, so he like walks out after he rapes her.
Yeah.
And then he comes back and he's like, hey, are you okay?
Yeah. Was that too violent?
And then she's like, oh, no. Like, of course, like, great session. Here's the, like, he pays her and it's like, oh, have a great time. And
I want to talk about Tucci in the movie though, real quick. I think, let me collect my thoughts. I understand why he took the role. It's a very interesting, challenging role. And I don't think it's a role that's like out of his range by any means. But I wonder if there was something lost in the direction. Because as we're talking about how he can be very charming, but then the switch can flip and he can be much more intimidating. It never worked for me in this movie. It was almost like he was too angry at points or too quick to, and I understand like part of that is, maybe it's the distancing yourself because you're playing a character. Right. And he was getting lost a little bit in that. But the chemistry between them was really bad. And I don't know if part of it was Alice Eve kind of, and I also wondered if this was a choice. She kind of wanders around like a robot for most of the movie. She sort of clunks around and I just didn't see the connection between them. And they're supposed to be this heated, passionate thing that turns really dark and violent. And I never got that heat. So when the violence comes, it's extra upsetting. And I do wonder if that is part of the direction because Neil LaBute really doesn't mind shocking an audience. I mean, this is a man who wrote a play called The Mercy Seat about a couple who live next to the World Trade Center, and after the planes crash into it, they spend the next 2 days deciding if they should just pretend to be dead and run away with their lives.
Holy shit.
Yeah, so he is not a man who is like afraid to move away, and I like him as a player. I know I've said some really disparaging things against him. I actually do think he's written some really good plays. But it's really interesting. I don't know if I feel like maybe the conversation about who the character was and what they should be doing and what they were trying to accomplish, there was a distance between all three of those things.
It's weird because when I saw it, I don't know that I think the movie succeeds ultimately in what it's trying to do. And what I read from it was, oh, this guy's so fucking pathetic.
Yeah. It's
like pathetic.
Well, cause I liked, like, at the very, very last minute with the switch where he's suddenly a different person. Right. I bought that performance. That's the performance I bought.
Right. And that's kind of why I thought that, like, oh, if he's trying to, if this is like a nice man.
Yeah.
Whose fantasy is to, you know, not only rape a woman, but like have this big whole fantasy and
a woman he has a connection with. Like that's the weirdest thing.
Right.
Like,
I mean, and this is like very murky, like sex politics, and whether this is like good for her or not. Like, if you are advocating for sex workers and, you know, she gets her money and she like, and they seem to have a positive relationship.
Yeah.
You know, if you're buying into the end of it and he's like, how are you, sweetie? Is it fine? And you know, and she's like, great. And when is the next time for you? And can you come back? Blah, blah, blah. Like as far as like sex workers and their John relationships go, this one seems to be pretty positive.
Yeah.
But the movie takes so long to let you in on it. It's so uncomfortable. And my reading of Stanley Tucci's character was, this guy's so pathetic and he thinks he has power. He thinks he like is able to, you know, and I didn't read any heat at all. I didn't get any like, oh, this is like a sexy drama, because there is no chemistry and it's clear that she wants him to go away.
Right.
And so that's why it's kind of a mind fuck. And, you know, I feel bad and awful and like that. A lot of that first of the movie is like, oh, this sucks and I hate this. I hate him in this and I hate everything. But then like, it's just like that last 2-3 minutes and you're like, oh, I guess if that's what your sex is, you're into, I guess. I don't know.
It just felt so pointless. It felt like it was like when that happens, it feels like, oh, look how naughty we've been. Right. And like, I don't know. I just didn't buy it. And he's a major part of that, but also more than anything, the direction, I feel like.
Yeah. I think also the movie didn't look, I mean, it was like the house is very like bare.
Yeah.
And I mean, Alice Eve is wearing this like hot red dress.
Yeah.
And so the focus is like a lot on her. And they just kind of like walk back and forth up and down the stairs a little bit. And
it's a lot of the same, it's a lot of circular conversations. And I get maybe if you're two people who are sort of improving that, like in the moment,
right,
it would feel more like that, but it's not very cinematic.
Right. For a movie, it's not like, and that's what I was trying to understand. I was like, okay, I guess if you're trying to make a movie about kind of some very extreme sexual, agreements or whatever, like situations, I guess this is kind of how that would go, but like as far as like a visual, like something to like see is like, it's not really entertaining per se. There's nothing entertaining about seeing Stanley Tucci rape a woman.
No, not
like
at all.
It's horrifying.
Yeah.
And again, this is like one of the,
and it wasn't. I mean, it's an unflinching moment. It's meant to shock you.
Yeah, for sure. This is not like, I mean, when I went into this movie, I thought like, oh, this is going to be like a sexy drama.
I did too.
Absolutely,
I saw the theater full of critics. You should have seen how many walkouts there were.
Oh, I bet. And I don't know. I mean, I read an interview where he talked about this movie, and they were like, "You say the word cunt a lot in this movie," and he was like, "Oh, I love the word cunt." Like, and I mean, there is something shocking about seeing Stanley Tucci. I mean, for people like us who maybe see him more like as the Devil Wears Prada, Easy A type guy, seeing him go so far against type, and like cursing and saying and doing these awful things, and so there is. I mean, maybe there's some value there as far as like excitement on the screen, but
I feel like he even does. You know, I feel like he made a film the year after Blind Date. We mentioned before, Patricia Clarkson.
Yeah.
I feel like that's clearly like the better version of this movie.
Right.
And the more well-directed version of this movie, and he directed it himself.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's weird because the movies are similar in some senses.
Yeah.
Just that Blind Date, I guess, is just about like kind of, you know.
It's a married couple whose relationship has fallen apart because a child passed away, which there's some unfortunate like post-life narration from the child, which I wish the film did not have, because I think it would have been a much better film without, but I actually really liked that movie. But he even has moments in that, you know, there's a scene where he tells her that, clearly trying to get a rise out of her, that he like slept with his mother. He sodomized his mother.
Yeah. I slept with my mother.
Maybe I'll have a beer. Was it nice?
It was all right. I sodomized her.
I think I will have a beer. Excuse me.
Did you hear what I said?
You're very sweet, I think.
I ass-fucked my mother. Come on. This is artless shit. I mean, come on.
And like that felt more like like a character playing a character trying to get a reaction out of somebody than
right. And so to be clear, Blind Date, him and his wife quote, play games.
Yeah.
And they pretend they don't know each other and they're meeting over and over again.
Right. And it's a way to try and heal their fractured relationship. Right. And it's not necessarily working. I did enjoy the fun bisexual waiter in the movie as well.
Right. Yeah. Were there any other bad movies that you think we should mention? Like things that you just really didn't like? I really, really just have to mention In Too Deep. Again, this was in 1999, and it's one of those, and I hate to say it is a concoction of like Hollywood where they're like, okay, we're gonna make a quote urban movie.
Yeah.
It stars LL Cool J as like this gangster, and oh my god, I'm gonna hate myself if I don't remember the name of the other lead. Omar Epps is the lead, and he's an undercover cop who's going in too deep with LL Cool J's gang. And Stanley Tucci is the police chief. It's very much in the vein of, it's essentially like a mob movie, but quote, like for black people. Like, and it's there, I just have to mention, because I went through this, and so you guys need to come along for the ride. There is a scene where LL Cool J, playing against type, basically sodomizes one of his like gang members who he doesn't like anymore with a pool stick. And the movie is so, I mean, I also noticed a lot of his movies, they have a lot of aggressive, like, anti-gay things going on. I mean, I guess for the times, I guess, like the 90s, I get it. 2000s, like, I'm a millennial, I get it. But I was just like, that specifically, I was like, oh, they're showing, okay, great. It's LL Cool J, like, who's, you know, hosting the fucking Grammys every year, and like, America's most accessible black rapper, you know, and
that's really awful.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
No, and that's it. I mean, Burlesque, I turned off, but he's fine in it.
I do have one, and this is really funny, because he did win the Golden Globe for it. Winchell. I watched 1998's HBO, movie Winchell, and he's like pulling an okay performance, like he's basically doing a caricature. Mm-hmm. And that was a little frustrating because the whole movie felt like it was a caricature. And I think biopics that are about real people, especially people who were like as damaging to the fabric, like he was essentially America's biggest propagandist. He started out as a gossip columnist and eventually became sort of like a mouthpiece for the Red Scare. It felt very like cartoony and very like sort of redeeming, and like, you know, and I don't mind him trying to humanize the character, but what he was doing wasn't really a human portrayal. It was like
a cartoon.
It's like, I'm Walter Winchell, and like, I'm gonna speak like this throughout the whole movie and everything. And so it was a really strange, I get why he won the award for it, because it's very much a character.
He put in a lot of work.
Yeah, but the movie itself is not great, and therefore the performance is really, I mean, it's a very, very much a 1998 biopic.
Right.
Like, hits all those buttons.
I also have to say, I watched The Lovely Bones, and I just didn't get it.
Oh, that movie fucking sucks.
I just didn't get it.
Like, speaking of the omniscient dead child.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's like, and I mean, a lot of his movies have like weird echoes to each other. Did not know that Peter Jackson directed.
Yeah.
And once I saw his name come up, I was like, oh, now it makes sense. Now,
and that movie, like, I remember, because that movie was his follow-up to Lord of the Rings, and like, I understand there's so much pressure on that.
Yeah.
Because they, you know, these three massive films, he wins Best Director for, you know, the third one, which is unheard of.
Right.
And he decides to adapt this, like, bestseller that everybody read on the beach during the summer.
Yeah, this emo high school bestseller. Like,
and yeah, so I get why the pressure was there, but man, is it a maudlin piece of crap.
Like, I mean, I like, it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Like, Peter Jackson, you know, creates some very lovely scenes. Like, there's a particularly horrifying scene that probably it's supposed to stand in for him actually murdering Susie Salmon.
Yes.
And he's like in a tub, looking very ominous, and it's like all white, and then maybe see all the blood everywhere. If you don't know, The Lovely Bones is an adaptation of a book by the same name, and it's narrated by Susie Salmon, and she's talking to us from
the great beyond.
Right, the upside down, who knows?
Yeah.
And she's like,
Saoirse.
Yeah, it's Saoirse Ronan, who Live, Laugh, Love. And she's talking about, you know, I was killed and my parents are trying to find me and blah, blah, blah. And essentially, this town creeper maybe not town creeper. He's been murdering girls across, the East for a long while. And, there's like sci-fi elements to it. And so Stanley Tucci plays the murderer.
Would you like a refreshment, Susie?
Actually, I have to go.
No, be polite. You have to be polite. Be polite. That's another rule.
But anyway, I think I'm done talking shit about Stanley Tucci now.
Me too. So let's take a step back and talk about a little more of the positive stuff. Our 5-star reviews. So this one wasn't difficult for me, and I will say, I was a little upset for having seen so many Stanley Tucci movies. I don't feel like my opinion changed much on him. I think he's really excellent at what he does. If we're talking about the films that he's in for like 5 to 10 minutes, 15 minutes at most, one of the things we like about him, and I was discussing this with Dan not too long ago, that he's really good at what he does. He's not in a ton of movies, like in terms of length. So when he shows up, you're excited to see him.
Yep.
He gets to do a great thing, and then he goes away.
Right.
And so it's hard to do this for his career. So once again, like I picked something of the longer, because I think it's only fair to judge him by the sort of length of his work and the craftsmanship he puts in. So my pick is 1996's Big Night.
It's mine too.
Is it really?
Yeah.
That's really funny. So it was the first film he co-directed with Campbell Scott, as we mentioned earlier. And it was written by Stanley Tucci along with his cousin, Joseph, Tropiano. And it's this great film about, two Italian brothers who want to make their own food in their restaurant. The restaurant's failing, and, they throw a dinner. And it's just a really fucking enjoyable film.
It is so, I mean, that is like high level, like for the time, like I was like, yes, this is, I mean, so where, it's wild because, Joe Gould's Secret was in 2000, 4 years later.
Yeah.
And so his second, directorial thing, endeavor. And, like, it's like the polar opposite. Like, everything I don't want in a movie in, like, the early millennium, in New York. Like, it's just, like, too stuffy, not fun. Big Night is just like, oh, chef's kiss, breath of fresh air. It's funny.
It really is.
It's exciting. It's sad.
His brother is Tony Shalhoub, as we mentioned before. He plays Primo. And Stanley Tucci plays the younger brother, Segundo. And he's having relationship troubles with his girlfriend, Phyllis. And
Minnie
Driver. And he's also been sleeping with Gabriella, the wife of a restaurant competitor.
Isabella
Rossellini, exactly. And so they're surrounded by all these other great actors. He's more of the hype man. His brother's Primo's more of the chef.
Yeah, Primo is like the chef who is like, the best scene of the movie is the very beginning where they're making food at the restaurant for like there's one couple, and another kind of famous New York comedian is playing the woman. I can't remember her name, but I recognized her, and she was like, "What's this? I ordered this doesn't look what I ordered." And he's like, "Oh, this is what did she order? She orders risotto. This is risotto with shrimp and scallops." And she's like, "I just don't see any scallops. I don't see any shrimp."
It's not what I expected. But I get a side order of spaghetti with this, right?
Why? Well, no.
I thought all main courses come with spaghetti.
Well, some, yes, but you see, risotto is rice, so it is the starch, and it doesn't go really with pasta.
But I don't...
Honey, order a side of spaghetti, that's all. And I'll eat your meatballs.
Yeah, he'll have the meatballs.
Well, the spaghetti comes without meatballs.
There are no meatballs with the spaghetti?
No, sometimes spaghetti likes to be alone.
It's such a good and charming movie. So they get everybody together for this dinner, and the how they try and keep them to the dinner is they promise Louie Prima's gonna show up.
Louie Prima's gonna show up because the other restaurateur who's like just trying to steal them away. He's like, "Oh yeah, my friend Louie Prima, I'll invite him. They'll have a big night. There'll be press there, and then you'll just be like full of patrons, and it'll save your restaurant." And it's all planning for this one big night.
Yeah, and everybody eats there, and then I don't want to tell you too much. Like, you should watch the rest of the movie and see how it plays out from there. But it's a really beautiful character study too, and I guess that's like what you don't often get. I think that's why I mentioned Blind Date in the past section. I ended up actually liking Blind Date. I think it has many more missteps than Big Night, but I think I think Stanley Tucci is a lot more interesting when he's really invested in the characters, and even if he's like fully involved in the characters, in their creation, in the writing, and the directing. Somebody, when I told them I was doing Stanley Tucci, their first reaction was like, he's never really worked with that many interesting directors. And I hate to say it, they're right. He hasn't worked with that many interesting directors, but I think the most interesting director he's worked with is himself. And I think he's a really talented. Yeah, I think he's a really talented
Guys,
director.
everyone, lesson today. The most interesting person you can work with is yourself.
Because if you can't direct yourself, how the hell are you going to direct somebody else? Can I get an amen?
Amen.
I don't know. I think there's something, he clearly knows himself. And as we mentioned many, many times, he's rarely bad, and I think that comes through in a lot of his performances, but I think he knows himself so well that when he puts himself in the director's chair, it's much more of a challenge to get the really heart of that character, and so he has to dig a little deeper.
Right. I think he also does better when he's able to just kind of like play and have fun.
Yeah.
Because he does all these movies where like in Spotlight, which was like the Oscar winning movie or whatever fucking year, and like he just has to play kind of like balding old white dude who, or not old, but oldish, middle-aged white dude who is like a bureaucrat, and he does that a lot. I mean, that's who.
It's so funny because I saw another movie, and I guess we probably should have talked this during Once Our Review. He did this movie directed by Robert Redford in 2014 called The Company You Keep, which was about the weatherman, and like he plays the publisher of a Albany newspaper. And I was like, this is the exact fucking thing he did in Spotlight.
It's also the same character that he plays in the Transformers movies.
Yeah.
It's just kind of like...
Did you watch those?
No, don't be crazy.
Okay, good.
I watched like a trailer.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. But I mean, even, and like he's played those characters for ages. I watched this really great romantic comedy that I ended up loving, and I was shocked that I loved it, called Prelude to a Kiss, with Alec Baldwin and Meg Ryan. And he plays Alec Baldwin's best friend, and he's not in the movie very much, but that's the same. He plays the same role.
He plays like everyman best friend characters. And I mean, I will mention like, and so when talking about him getting to play, even when he is in these smaller roles, thinking about Shall We Dance?
Yeah.
His character could have easily been the everyman middle-aged white dude, but he gets to kind of play this eccentric weirdo who like is really into ballroom dancing and wears crazy wigs.
Gets to say some really offensive shit about how hard it is to be straight.
Absolutely. Very.
Swish butt, fancy pants, pinky boy, all these names that I've been called ever since I was 8 years old and dancing around on my mother's rumba records. Now, you know what the worst of it is? Huh? I'm not gay. Can you imagine how much easier my life would be if I were? I mean, a straight man who likes to dance around in sequins walks a very lonely road. I got news for you. Look, you're not going to tell anybody in the office, huh?
No, I wouldn't do that. Because I'm in the same boat, aren't I?
He kind of plays like, I think Caesar Flickerman is like a permutation of this character
from Shall We Dance. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And he, in Shall We Dance, like when he's dancing, he gets to wear a wig and he gets to wear fake teeth.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, it's definitely a precursor to that.
Again, he gets to have a lot of fun doing Easy A, Burlesque, Devil Wears Prada, which I mean is just
it's fun that we get to talk about that again. I feel like every 6 months we'll have to do another actor who is in. Unfortunately, at some point we'll get to fucking Adrian Chase or whatever.
Oh God, Grenier.
Grenier
is his name. I mean, so if you're trying to look for a Stanley Tucci fronted movie, like an indie film, go watch Big Night. Yes. Ignore Joe Gold's Secret. Unless you have seen it and let me know I'm wrong. I don't know.
I can't believe this is the second week in a row.
I know, 2 for 2.
Normally we don't, because we don't, one of the fun things about this is we don't talk about it beforehand. That way we come in fresh.
My other thing that I really, really liked, weirdly enough, was Sidewalks of New York. I don't know if you watched that.
I saw it years ago.
Edward Burns directed and wrote this movie, Sidewalks of New York, and it's kind of shot in a documentary style, and it's 2001, I believe. So the tail end of those like 90s movies where they're like, it's like you're going up to people on the streets of New York and like tell me about how crazy and wild it is to be in New York. Heather Graham's in this movie. Rosario Dawson, very young Rosario Dawson. Oh man, I wish I knew the name of the guy who's in 10 Things I Hate About You, who's the best friend. David Krumholtz.
Yeah, David Krumholtz.
Brittany Murphy, R.I.P. She's so good in this movie also. Stanley Tucci is one of the guys. And so essentially there's like six main characters. And they're kind of all connected, not really. And they're essentially, this documentary is, I mean, they don't tell you what this is about, but Rosario Dawson's like, oh, I don't know if I should be telling you guys this, but whatever. It's all about sex. It's all about like dating and sex. And, you know, Edward Burns goes on a date with Rosario Dawson and they, you know, it's looking at that. But then he's also buying a house from Heather Graham.
All right, then why, after 6 years of marriage, are you suddenly so concerned about the size of your penis? I've been having sex.
I read
why
that
do you
article.
care?
I told you about the article that I read in the magazine, the men's magazine, and the average size of the penis is, you know, is
Are
seems.
you fucking someone out? That's what I'm wondering.
Stop with
Some
that
girl
question.
looking at
That
your
question.
penis and
Stop
you're
it.
Feeling like, oh, is it big enough? Like, because you never worried about that with me.
Well, I'm worried about it with you. Who else am I going to worry about it with?
Well, you don't seem worried.
Well, I am
If
worried.
you were worried, then you'd come home right after work and you wouldn't come
I'm
home
going to
like
the
3
gym.
hours
I'm doing
later and
penis
leave me sitting there
exercises at the
alone.
gym. I'm doing penis exercises. I mean,
It's really
I'm joking
funny.
about.
You're really funny. So you think everything seems normal?
No, I'm not saying everything seems normal. It seems like it is what I just told you, which is mostly I'm tired.
Stanley Tucci's part in this is also kind of reflective of Velvet whatever garbage.
Some Velvet Morning, yes.
Because in this movie, he is having an affair with Brittany Murphy, and he's married to Heather Graham. And he kind of just talks like he is the voice in this movie that's just like, listen, I'm a scumbag. I live a very, quote, European lifestyle. And I just don't believe in monogamy. I just don't believe in it. And, he doesn't want to get a divorce because the money would be too much. And he's a dentist. And, Heather Graham meanwhile is just like, well, I don't even have sex on the first date. No. Oh my God. And blah, blah, blah. And Brittany Murphy is just like poor.
I'm enjoying these impersonations.
Like 19-year-old who, you know, is a student, and who he like picked up very like grossly. And, I really enjoyed this movie. I think it's fun. I think Edward Burns is dreamy AF. I hope he's not problematic. He probably is. I don't know. But yeah, if another kind of nice, early 2000s, late 90s, movie about New York by New Yorkers. You can tell this movie is like just inhabited by all these like New Yorkers who just know it so well. And closing up our 5-star review section, I just cannot enough talk about Easy A, The Devil Wears Prada, and to a lesser extent Julie and Julia, mostly the Julia part. I cannot I just want to really make sure Devil Wears Prada, him.
You're like, I just need to circle back.
Him specifically in this movie, saying, "Gird your loins."
Yes, the line,
line. And he's not in this movie a lot, but he has a character arc, and he, has there are stakes for him, and and in the end, it doesn't work out for him, and you get to see range from his character. He is kind of like the Pinocchio, Geppetto character for Anne Hathaway that says, "Listen, no one's feeling sorry for you, so
right.
oh, you don't want to get the fuck out then. This is an amazing opportunity, and you're being a bitch."
What is it that you want me to say to you, huh? Do you want me to say, poor you? Miranda's picking on you. Poor you, poor Andy. Wake up, 6. She's just doing her job. Don't you know that you were working at the place that published some of the greatest artists of the century? Halston, Lagerfeld, De La Renta. And what they did, what they created, was greater than art. Because you live your life in it. Well, not you, obviously, but some people. You think this is just a magazine? This is not just a magazine. This is a shining beacon of hope for, I don't know. Let's say a young boy growing up in Rhode Island with 6 brothers, pretending to go to soccer practice when he was really going to sewing class and reading Runway under the covers at night with a flashlight. You have no idea how many legends have walked these halls. And what's worse, you don't care. Because this place, where so many people would die to work, you only deign to work. And you want to know why she doesn't kiss you on the forehead and give you a gold star on your homework at the end of the day. Wake up, sweetheart.
Excellent. I think we're done with our 5-star reviews then.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's
but before we move into the next section, we should recap.
Right, recaps.
The things we didn't like and the things we did like. So my 1-star review was Some Velvet Morning, and my 5-star review was Big Night. Louis?
My 1-star review was 2000's Joe Gould's Secret, and my 5-star review was also Big Night, which was a 1996 film.
Moving into our fast forward, what do you what does he have coming up that's interesting? And what do you want from him? Because I know what I want from him. But I mean, we both know.
We know. Yeah. I want to mention that there's like a lost Meryl Streep, Stanley Tucci, Tina Fey movie. He apparently was in talks to direct a movie starring Meryl Streep and Tina Fey called Mommy and Me.
That's right.
And it never materialized. Apparently, just like they never could land on a script that the studio liked, that they liked, and it is a tragedy.
Yeah.
It was supposed to be a movie about Tina Fey moving home to live with her mom, Meryl Streep, and I would watch the shit out of that.
Oh, also, real quick shout out to a 2015 TV movie that I actually really liked him in. I forgot to mention this. He was in a British TV movie called Peter and Wendy, in which he played Captain Hook, as well as the Father Darling, and a heart surgeon, because they did this whole thing where it was like the little girl in it was like having heart surgery, and she's also Wendy. So the role is traditionally Captain Hook and the father. So we got to play 3 different roles. And let me tell you, he is having so much fucking fun as Captain Hook.
I love that.
Yeah. It's a fun, every year ITV and BBC get together to do their big Christmas movies. And this was one of them. And like, they're not always Christmassy. This one wasn't. And,
yeah, I mean, so I guess we didn't mention, Stanley Tucci now lives in London.
Yes.
He moved, his family to go live, with where I guess Felicity Blunt was based out of. And he said he likes it better there.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I would too if I could afford it. Right. This past year, he did all 8 episodes of Feud.
Oh, right. He was in Feud, playing Mr. Warner. Is that right?
Yeah, Jack Warner. He was playing Jack Warner. I thought his performance was great. I do wonder what he was doing. I mean, it's fine. Everybody else is taking pay cuts too, I'm assuming, to do it. Right. So,
his IMDb already is so full with things coming up in 2018 and 2019. He's a voice in something called Show Dogs.
Oh, have you not seen the trailer for Show Dogs?
No, I have not.
Stars Will Arnett and Natasha Lyonne, and a cast of characters as the dogs themselves. Stanley Tucci, Alan Cumming, Shaquille O'Neal, Gabriel Iglesias. Yeah, so like, it's gonna be a garbage, but Will Arnett needs to eat, folks.
Yeah, he has alimony. Okay?
Exactly.
And then in 2019, The Man Who Saved Paris.
Yes, he plays Siobhan Shea.
What did you call me?
Siobhan Shea.
Yeah, I mean, so he's busy as always. Like, I guess I don't know what half of these things are.
Can I just read the plot synopsis of The Man Who Saved Paris?
Sure. Hit me.
The most successful brothel owner in Paris during the 1940s is asked by the government to restore the city's image, city of love, romance, light, after the Nazi occupation, and falls in love when he least expects it. It stars Stanley Tucci and Kristen Scott Thomas.
Wow.
So...
Wow.
Romance.
I mean...
But she's another strong actor that, like, I feel like he's only going to be there to highlight. Or not only be there, but, like, part of the thing he does, as you mentioned before, is he lifts up his scene partners. Yeah. And especially when they're females, you know.
It's amazing. I love it. Selfishly, I very much would not like to see him being an angry murderer rapist ever again.
Yeah, I think at his age, which once again isn't that old, I don't need to see him be any more villains.
It's crazy because I read an interview, he said, I've been playing dads since I was like 25. He's like, it's weird. Like, I just have like an older, like, kind of vibe and look and feel. And so...
You can come play my dad.
Hello. And I think also once he started losing his hair, he just kind of like, really leaned into those roles. I think he's so funny.
Yes.
And I would love if he could like, find or get into a pure comedy. because of what we saw and got a taste for in Easy A, and to a lesser extent, but also similar in Devil Wears Prada. I would love to see him full out, have a whole story.
He has amazing instincts and an amazing ability to play off anyone he's paired with, which is a really impressive thing. I agree. I would love to see him do more comedies. I don't mind the model he's doing right now of, as we mentioned before, where he does, 2 fucking Transformers films and then he gets to do whatever he wants for the next 3 years. But I just wish I want more lead content from him in those 4 years where he's not making Transformers films or not doing, the Hunger Games films.
Also, when I was like, he's only been nominated for 1 Oscar, which seems wild to me. But then actually going through his filmography, I was like, oh, he's not in a lot of movies, even as he's a supporting actor, but it's never enough, that would guarantee, that kind of recognition. And I want him to have a role that he can really sink his teeth into. And really showcase, because he is so good.
And once again, I do think he's a much more interesting director than he has been given credit for. I'd like to see him do something that tests his bounds more, because I will say, outside of Blind Date, I feel like the films he's directed have been a little more run-of-the-mill, and that's not a knock, because I love Big Night, as I mentioned, but they're not wildly crazy, and I wouldn't mind seeing him do something slightly more visually interesting. But other than that, I do think he's a really talented director, and even when he's directing himself, which is not easy.
I wonder if, and you had mentioned he hasn't worked with a lot of interesting directors, people who could maybe push him. Because when he does his own stuff, I think it's a very, he gets comfortable, and it's something that, Big Night is so personal. You feel it, and you believe everything that's going on in there. And then all these other movies, it's like, oh, we just need you to be Stanley. That's all we need you to do.
Easy A is a good example where, once again, very funny. We love him in Easy A. At least I love it. I don't want to speak for you, but
oh, I hate it.
But it's gross. And I do actually. I know somebody who hated that movie, and I was like, how could you possibly?
Get out of here. But the worst thing about Easy A is that they made Penn Badgley wax his chest. Period.
Agreed. And also, isn't he 40 in that role?
Correct.
Well, whatever. But that's why they cast him. They were like, oh, Stanley Tucci will play your father because he can be Stanley Tucci.
Right. And I wonder if, and the reason why he got so much, recognition for The Lovely Bones is it really was kind of, pushing against, what he usually does. And it certainly showed range. Now he just needs to be in a better movie. And doing that as well. I think also, I would love if he somehow had more capital, in Hollywood and financing to keep turning out these kind of smaller medium movies, that are, interesting and fun. Because, and that's just kind of a Hollywood thing, I guess, because they don't really make those anymore, but.
No, well, it's funny because, this is a conversation for another time, but that's where, Duncan Jones was just talking about that, about his new movie Mute, about Netflix, Amazon, Apple. Those are the people funding the mid-budget film nowadays. Right. And,
I would love him to be in a Big Sick type of movie.
He could have easily played Ray Romano's role.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And it would have been great. He's funny.
Yeah.
And, also dramatic. So I think that's kind of the sweet spot. And he's definitely at the age where now it's age appropriate to be playing fathers.
Right.
And so, I hope I know that there are more interesting things out there for him. And, I hope that he just doesn't get sucked up by all these big tentpole things where he doesn't have time to do this.
But he's not. But the interesting thing about him is he's never fallen into that trap of only doing this showy award performance. And that is something I'll give him as well too. That he's never fallen victim of oh, I got nominated for Academy Award. This is the only thing I will do from now on.
Right.
Because he's so good at the other stuff. But I would like to see him try those more at least.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And you're right. I definitely could see Netflix or Amazon or whoever being oh, we found the perfect vehicle, and we're just gonna throw a bunch of money at it, and because he is a name, people know him. When they see him, they get excited.
I was really surprised about the reaction when I posted the image on our Twitter, People are like, oh my God, I love him. So
people love him. And so do we.
So do we. So thank you for the suggestion, Melissa.
Thank you, Melissa.
And I guess that brings us to the natural conclusion of this episode. Very natural.
Very natural.
You should have seen my dance moves I just did. Louie is looking at me like I'm a crazy person.
Get out of the splits, Gavin.
I can't. But where can you find us online if you want to find us?
We are on Twitter at The Mixed Reviews.
We are on Facebook and just search The Mixed Reviews.
Where else are we?
We have an email if you want to email us comments, questions, concerns. That's reviewsmixed@gmail.com.
We're on Grindr.
We're not so much.
Not anymore.
Yeah.
Gavin deleted.
So just one of us.
Right.
And you can find us
you can listen to us on iTunes,
Stitcher Radio, Spotify, iHeartRadio, SoundCloud, and Google Play Music. So, really, you just have no excuse not to put us in your ears.
Gavin. Oh my God. You should have seen that dance move, guys.
I'm the fake bitch.
He is that fake bitch you thought he was.
But yes, and we're going to deliberate and decide on our next subject, and we'll see you guys in 2 weeks.
Awesome. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Tucci gang, Tucci gang, Tucci gang. Tucci gang, Tucci gang, Tucci gang, Tucci gang, Tucci gang, Tucci gang, Tucci gang. Some of you don't know the name, but that's that guy from the Hunger Games. Married Felicity Blunt. Sister of Emily Blunt. My man Tooch is with the blunt. Tucci gang, Tucci gang, Tucci gang. 32 years in the biz. I'm a big fan of his. I got mad respect for his range. He should have been Doctor Strange. The Devil Wears Prada was sick. If you don't like Stan, you're a dick. He adds value to your flick. If you don't like Stan, you a bitch. He did 2 movies with Street. I want to name my son Tucci. Did you know my man had a cookbook? And he was the co-owner of a restaurant. Tucci gang, Tucci gang, Tucci gang, Tucci gang, Tucci gang, Tucci gang, Tucci gang. Some of you don't know the name, but that's that guy from the Hunger Games.